I have the feeling that a lot of queer people are interested in Pokémon, but I can't point out exactly why. Is Pokémon specifically a queer-friendly series? Why do we have literal drag queen Pokémon team nights in gay clubs? What makes it so there is such a huge intersection on this Venn diagram? Is it because Pokémon has a huge amount of queer-coded characters like Grusha and Wallace? Is Pokémon's gender-neutral approach to protagonists and creatures themselves more inviting for queer fans? Is just that enough to make it attractive for the gays? Or is it just popular and then, of course, LGBT people will come along for the ride? I'm asking just because, I don't know, when I see some new trans creator, including me, they will weirdly often have a bunch of Pokémon plushies around. Or I will find out that the person who runs one of my favorite Pokémon pages is actually gay. Is it just a coincidence? Is it confirmation bias because my algorithm shows me gay people and Pokémon people and also both? Happy Pride Month to all you gals, gays, and bees and eggs out there. Myself, I'm having an amazing month, even though I will miss Pride again for literally the 4th year in a row. We really need to learn from Brazilian Carnival and start doing Pride weekends. Like, free parades, 3 days in a row. It's really hard to make it when it's just one day. If I keep missing Pride like this, my LGBT membership might even be revoked. For this video, I want to try something a bit different, a more unorthodox Cecilily video. My channel really grew up in size in the last month and I have a lot of new subscribers and a Discord server. Join us! And they are all so sweet. Nothing makes me happier in this little YouTube journey of mine than reading the comments, and I used to try to reply to all of them before the Among Us video. Now, I think this is going out of proportion a little bit, and it is a challenging task to talk to each one of you, so my idea with this video is for us to get to know each other a little better, dear stranger online. This video is not a video essay by any means, but still, an investigation. I still don't know why queer people love Pokémon, and by the time I'm finished with this video, I hope we can all have a better idea together. At the end of the Among Us video, I asked a few questions around why do queer people love Pokémon, and I got a lot of very interesting answers. In this video, to commemorate Pride, I'm going to give voices to queer people and allies who had something to add about that topic. There are 600 comments in that video and I unfortunately cannot share all of them, but I want to highlight the ones that I think I can add something to. At the end of the video, I will share my own thoughts and hopefully we can get even more comments in this one with even better theories as to why we love this game so much. And when you, inevitably, leave a comment on this one, make sure to subscribe too so you can watch my next videos while we sail the deep and treacherous waters of the YouTube algorithm. But before we start, it is Pride Month and I need to address the elephant in the room. My bandeira. On every video, I get dozens of comments asking about the bandeira, asking, are you Brazilian? Or saying, I love the flag, so let's talk about it. And yes, I am Brazilian, born in Brazil, lived in Brazil for 20 years. I moved out in 2019 due to very well-known political reasons and to work abroad, and I have been living abroad ever since. I work in English and I have a lot of English-speaking friends. Most of my Brazilian friends also understand English very well, so that's the main reason why this channel is in English. This flag is called A Bandeira Nacional by artist Fred Costa, and it's not just the Brazilian flag in trans colors, but also the positivist military boring motto Order and Progress is replaced by a nice and pretty rainbow, so I think this is more akin to the Progress flag rather than a purely trans one. I bought mine in a graphic shop in Belo Horizonte, and you can follow them on Instagram to know more how to get your hands in one. Okay, good. Let's talk Pokémon. Why is it so popular among the gays? Let's go to my comment section to find out. I'll read first this comment from @catpickles. They write, I think the diversity in the community is a mirror of the diversity of Pokémon itself. Every Pokémon is someone's favorite. Thus, there is a Pokémon for everyone and every taste. And I'm sure lots of people are like me and have loved Pokémon since long before we knew we weren't quite cis-et. Which is something that I identify with, definitely. Me and a lot of people have liked Pokémon from a very young age, so our enjoyment of this series predates our self-understanding as queer in a lot of ways. Let's see if we can get a bit deeper. Lulusin5022 wrote that, with so many monsters, Pokémon has designs that appeal to all kinds of people, and especially for LGBT+ people, there is a lot to enjoy in this franchise. Genderless Pokémon, feminine Pokémon that can be male, masculine Pokémon that can be female, Pokémon that, despite having a gender, don't perform either masculinity nor femininity, the cutesy ones that aren't strong but are trying their best, and let's not forget Pokémon that slay. Gardevoir, Roserade, Gothitelle, Sylveon, Serena, Hatterene, Quaquaval, and others. I'm not saying that every queer person likes that type of Pokémon, but they are very appealing to many people in the LGBT+ community. And yes, Pokémon do in fact slay. That's why Pokémon Team Drag Queen Nights are so fun. Charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. So, could that be the answer? Aesthetics? Cutie Calupto thinks that it's true that I've heard of Pokémon being very popular among gay and queer spaces. I think there's nothing intrinsically queer about Pokémon, and it has more to do with the huge scale of its audience. So many people grew up on Pokémon that it would be weird if queer people didn't also fall into the mix. There's also something about the simplicity of catching monsters and being the best trainer that steers away from any traditional masculine traits you'd find in your standard sword-wielding JRPG that gives it a more universal appeal than most franchises. Majiradine wrote that it's a combination of what you mentioned about it just being hugely culturally significant overall, so of course there's a portion of that huge player base who's queer, and also that is just not too concerned about gender at all. Pokémon was made as something for kids to enjoy, not just boys. Sure, the main character is male, but anyone can clearly see that Misty is there as a powerful gym leader, who you even get to follow in the anime. And women feature regularly as prominent characters all the way up to Lorelei and Agatha in the Elite Four. In the anime, Jessie is the only member of the Rocket Trio who seems like she's actually competent. It doesn't feel quite so much like the standard shonen setup of the era, where boys are the only ones to be given any significant role at all. I think this was probably intentional because the creators correctly identified that cute critters appeal to young girls, so they made sure to include both Pokémon and humans who girls could relate and look up to. And then Hoenn came and introduced Wallace and all bets were off. Pokémon was gay. Signed, someone whose queer awakening was Cynthia. So Pokémon, mostly the anime, stood out from the other 90s productions for gender diversity and for displaying strong female characters. I do have another video on this channel about what is good queer representation in media, which is about Doctor Who, Euphoria, The Danish Girl, and some other things. If that interests you, you should check it out. But I don't know, a long time has passed since the 90s, and there are a lot of Pokémon fans that didn't specifically grow up with the anime. Could there be something in the games that explains this? Our friend from Discord, Sunny Autumn, wrote that she thinks it's because Pokémon is ultimately about self-expression. You can customize your team, your individual team members, and you get to form an emotional connection with them. It allows people to play what they like, how they like, and it's very accessible. Even the way you play the games is up to you. You can be a casual enjoyer, you can be a collector kind of person. You can get involved in the numbers of it all and play competitive. A field in which there is a lot of self-expression to be done usually. You can shiny hunt or literally make art of your own about it. You can make your own fake mons, draw a picture of your favorites, or customize the existing Pokémon with your own designs. Queer people tend to be, and this might be a bit of a generalization, but we usually are a little bit more artistically inclined than the average individuals, on average. We crave to have an outlet for that creativity, and Pokémon works wonderfully as that outlet. Not to mention, its immense popularity makes it easy to find sub-communities of like-minded individuals inside a larger community. You can have a Discord server entirely of queer Pokémon fans. After all, if you are a shiny hunter, a competitive player, or a story enjoyer, you want to share your gaming highlights with people who can appreciate them with you. And I mean, it is a good point as well. Thinking about myself, I always consider myself creative, and one of the main reasons why I started this YouTube channel was because I really needed an outlet for creativity in my personal life. Maybe my Pokémon collection works like that as well. Kuromi Magu wrote that Pokémon's massive popularity definitely helps with it, but to grow up with it and feel free enough to not be bound by those "now that you're an adult you must renegade your childhood" in general, are more accepting. Most of us were the weird kids, be it a gender reason, neurodivergency, or simply rather nerdy interests in general. When you exclude people, they tend to band together, and in an era where all children, especially the ones that were left out, had a game/anime to bond over, they grow up not only Pokémon fans, but oppression-aware people. When I was a kid, my queerness was not very visible, or at least not directly tied to femininity, at least not at first glance. I was bullied for having different interests, for being very nerdy, for bringing my Game Boy to school instead of playing sports like the other kids. I was nicknamed Game Boy by an asshole kid in primary school whom I still detest, because apparently 9-year-olds are too old to play Pokémon. I grew up feeling ashamed of the things that I liked, and that turned me into a bit of an outcast. I skipped an entire generation of Pokémon because I thought I needed to grow out of it, to be considered cool and popular and to be interesting to my crushes. I never played Gen 5 because of that. It came out at a time that I was very distant from Pokémon. It's funny because I felt that all my life I've been too old to like Pokémon. When I was 20, when I was 10, and today. And the point Kuromi talks about, mentioning outcasts coming together, resonates closely with me too. When I was 15 or 16, I definitely started hanging out with a more queer crowd. Almost all of them would come out in the following years, but back then we were just different. We liked alternative music, we drank cheap wine in the city square, we read poetry. We were queer, we just didn't know it fully yet. Also, this is the first comment that mentioned neurodivergency, which is something that showed up a lot in the following comments. Com182 also talked about the outsider's point of view. I thought a lot about your question at the end, and I think a big part of it may be that Pokémon attracts outsiders. I feel it particularly resonated with kids who experienced bullying, discrimination, loneliness, etc., and found it as a way to escape and also feel empowered when everything else wasn't going great. Like you, I'm only going by my own experience and what I can observe in the community, but I do think Pokémon creates a setting that feels like just a straight up better version of our world, that is safe, welcoming, and full of adventures where we feel a sense of agency and mastery. So while this isn't specific to the queer community, I think this is something that we experience far more than most people. There's also the massive Venn diagram overlap between being queer and being neurodivergent, which doubles down on the things above and brings in other attractions, collecting things, hyperfocus, etc. Ultimately, I think Pokémon has generally had a far bigger impact on us and means we remain interested in it, compared to lots of people who grew out of it. Getting more queer specific, the characters in the anime are definitely also a factor. Jessie and James would have to be two of the queerest characters to appear on children's television screens, and then you had Harley in the Gen 3 anime too. I'd say there's such a variety of major characters in the games and anime who don't present as cisgender or conventional that it is easier for queer people to see themselves in the Pokémon world than in many other popular game/media worlds. Profelu wrote as well from the neurodivergent point of view. I believe we queers tend to love Pokémon because we grew up as outcasts, and it was a franchise for nerd weirdos in the 90s and early 2000s. Also, the mix between neurodivergence and queerness is as high as it gets. And we, ND people, tend to go on full turbo nerd on what catches our passion. I really miss the Pokémon company using the right labels though. I mean, Penny is clearly non-binary and autistic, Grusha is hugely queer-coded, Kieran is obviously autistic, but we never get to see it being canon. I've heard that's because of Japanese culture. It would be awesome that they change shiny Amoonguss colors to match the trends or NB flag. And I am a bit embarrassed of not having thought from that perspective before. That's why it's nice listening to people from different points of view, right? Diversity is cool, and that's why we do interviews and that's why we do research. I was always aware that in gaming and in queer circles, you are more likely to meet with neurodivergent and people diagnosed with autism. And although there has been a lot of discourse between the correlation or lack of between neurodivergency and transness, I didn't initially tie those ends together. And although I think that is an amazing explanation, I feel that just like most of the explanations here, it just tells part of the story. Talking about Venn diagrams, yes, there is the intersection between neurodivergency and queerness, and liking Pokémon. But what about the people outside of it? I think it's a fun thinking exercise. Lastly, Rhythmic wrote that Pokémon cater to the concept of escapism and video games. Queer people tend to have bad times in school, so they gravitate toward gaming. My theory is that queer people are predisposed to the social conditions that push them towards these communities before they even realize they are queer/trans. And that's why there are so many queer/trans people in gaming, and why so many trans people in gaming have been coming out recently. The genderlessness of Pokémon, being catered to all children, the cute, queer, effeminate, and gender-neutral designs, the attractiveness of its characteristics to neurodivergent people, and the shared experiences of being an outcast as a child. None of them tell the entire story of why, specifically, queer people seem to love Pokémon. But I also think it's important to point out that, even though Pokémon is queer, it's also not. As a series, it has been locked into a binary view of the world and avoided more outspoken queer topics for a long time, having pronouns locked into your appearance, limiting which wardrobe choices you could make based on your gender. When I went back to the Pokémon X save I had when I was young, I still wanted to play with my old team, but there was no way that I could change my name or gender. I found myself having to use unofficial methods to meddle with my name in the save file, but trying to change my gender literally broke the game. And when Scarlet and Violet unified all of the wardrobes into genderless uniforms, it was done in such a boring way that the choice of clothes went from hundreds to 4. And they were too scared to add skirts because God forbid we give access to skirts to male-presenting characters. Most of the queerness of Pokémon comes not from Pokémon itself, but by the way that we, the community, relate to it. If we put the games into a microscope, then yes, we have one character that made a blink and you miss it mention of transitioning. And yes, I love the anime episode with the transitioned Pikachu, but honestly, without us, that's kind of it. The main reason why Pokémon is queer is because of queer fans. We made Pokémon queer, we transformed Amoonguss into a queer icon, we correlated Sylveon's fairy colors with the trans flag, and we looked at a software bug that changed Azuriel's gender and told ourselves it was a transition story. It is our queerness that acts as a lens when looking at these characters and sees a reflection of our individual experiences, identities, and sexualities. And it pressures the developers into queering it up as well, because that is how lots of us are connecting to the series. It is because of us that Pokémon doesn't ask anymore if you're a boy or a girl, and Pokémon Championships welcome chosen names and diverse pronouns. I personally believe that the reason why all the characters in Scarlet and Violet look extremely queer-coded and neurodivergent-coded and are creative and expressive and flamboyant is just so that they could look a little bit more like us. Queer people love Pokémon. I still don't know why, and we might never know. Welcome to social sciences, we don't have any answers. But I can for sure tell that what makes Pokémon attractive for queer people is us. We made it that way. We made and are still making Pokémon more and more queer. And honestly, I think that's something we should be very proud of. This is a very short one, for my standards at least, but I'm having a very rushed Pride Month and I wanted to have something recorded to commemorate it before I left on a longer trip. I want to thank everyone who left comments and whose comments I used. There are a few other comments which I pre-selected but didn't share because some of them would repeat the same beats or make the video very long, but I will be sure to leave screenshots at the end of the video if anyone wants to read. There is a lot going on in my life right now. I am kind of going crazy, but I promise I will have a more consistent posting schedule starting from August. If you want to join our Discord server with a lot of other like-minded people to discuss queerness and pop culture and talk to me about these videos before they are published, please join, the link is in the description. I also launched a very humble membership campaign here on YouTube if you want to support this channel financially. I'm running this channel in my free time from my job and any help would be an amazing incentive. I am planning some interesting rewards in the future, maybe some Discord exclusive chats, but for now, I'm just asking for tips from the kindness of your heart. Feel free to contribute if you have the means, of course. Happy Pride to you all, and I hope to see you back on this channel soon.